Hi, I'm Trenton McRae. I'm with the Enterprise Events team, and in my former life, I was a gaffer or chief lighting designer in motion pictures and television. In my time there, I worked on about 80 motion pictures and TV shows, and my talk is lessons learned from 10 years in Hollywood productions. And one of the things I want to talk about is how you compose yourself in your career in less than ideal circumstances, through failure, and the way you handle yourself in those stressful moments can really impact not only how you see your job, see your career, but it can help shape the trajectory of your career. And over my time in the industry, I got to learn from some really great people, so I hope to impart some stories here, and maybe you'll find it interesting. So this slide's a little kind of visual graphic of my career. I grew up in Kansas City and moved to LA after college. Started working on movies and ended up in Louisiana for a little while, and then found my way to New York City. So here's a little visual of some sports teams of the places I worked and the places I called home. Over my time, I ended up working in 15 states and 4 different countries making movies. So my first lesson that I'd like to impart is don't hate the work. It's easy to go, this is wrong, this is screwed up, I hate this. Focus on the good things and don't hate your work. This movie right here, Logan, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar. It was one of the most uncomfortable shows that I ever worked on. It was hot, it was humid, full of bugs. I was helping do second unit for this movie, and it was a week of nights. Every night we come in and work until the sun comes up in the morning. And I was one of the few people on set who was working without a full mosquito net around my body, because these guys have been working on the show for months at this point. And it was easy to look over and you're just getting eaten alive and you want to complain. But at the end of the day, we're working on Wolverine, And that made me think of a story that a friend of mine told me about working on Saving Private Ryan. And these guys are working for the top of the top. I mean, Janusz Kaminski's crew working Spielberg. I mean, does it get better than that? And these guys are complaining the whole time. And that story just kind of made me think, if you can't help but have a bad day every day you're at work, you might be doing the wrong thing. So enjoy the moments that you can. Don't take your personal frustrations out on the job. You might miss some really great opportunities. And if you're struggling and you just can't help but focus on the bad, it might help to sing in your head, let it go, let it go. That helps me a little bit some days. All right, and most importantly with that show, yes, I did get to wear the real Wolverine claws. Unfortunately, taking pictures with the claws was strictly prohibited, but I looked a lot like this little kid wearing those claws. They're really metal, and they had these like kind of hand sculpted palm grips that were just for Hugh Jackman's hands. So lifetime accomplishment, check. Enthusiasm is key. This photo is a picture of Ethan Embry. We worked with him in New York, and something that he really brought to the table that was particularly special was the enthusiasm he had for the job and the way he would greet people as if he was greeting someone who was a long-lost friend. His overall just great demeanor and attitude really resonated in his performance and his set life, and he was a wonderful person to work around. So I encourage, be enthusiastic about what you do. That positive energy is going to go a long way. Another thing that you should just keep in your mind is setbacks happen. Sometimes you're going to have to do the work twice at twice the price. This rig in the picture in the bottom left was for an American Express commercial. We worked 2 really hard days, 12-hour days, to set up all this equipment. I mean, we had 9 18,000-watt lights set up, 4 9Ks. It was over 250,000 watts of light for this single setup. And we got to the 3rd day, and we're ready to shoot, and we get the call. Our athlete's been injured, and he's not going to come because he can't perform any basketball things for American Express. It would break his NBA contract. Athlete was Anthony Davis. So we had to tear the whole thing down without shooting one single frame and rebuild it 8 weeks later. talk about frustrating, man. We were sore, we were tired, we were worn out. We finally did get to do the shoot though, but setbacks happen, it's okay. All right, so the next lesson is be uncomfortable. It's a great way to grow and learn. Don't just coast in your career. On this slide, I'm showing Benji, which was a really fun movie that we got to try some new and exciting things. And then a movie that was originally called Heart Baby, which was a boxing movie. And My Best Boy Electric, which is like my right-hand man, and I just promised each other that we'd keep pushing. We were trying to push the envelope on the technology we were using and any way that we could build our skill sets. So early 2000s, we're building our own like wireless lighting systems. That wasn't really a thing. Like wireless DMX was not popular at that time in the sense that it wasn't integrated into any of the units. Now, it's a pretty common thing. So each show, we tried to build a new unit, design some new workflow, or push ourselves to learn and better our skills. And that's something that can really help you differentiate yourself and advance yourself in your career. And it's a good challenge, man. Like, to just don't get complacent. So another lesson here, this is from a movie called Kidnap, which was a Halle Berry movie. Keep your cool even when the doors fly off. So the top left here is a van sitting on a specialty vehicle that we call a Biscuit. And it's a V10 Cadillac engine that has a driver in the front that sits super low. And so Hallie would be in the car with the disabled steering wheel. It looks like she's driving, but there's actually a race car driver driving this vehicle that has platforms around it that we can rig cameras and lights all the way around it without worrying about impeding the driver's vision. That car can go super fast, can swerve in and out of traffic, and ultimately it looks like you're on the level of a regular car. And then top right, that's called the Biscuit, or that's called the pod, sorry. And the pod sits on top of the van. And again, it's that same, like, race car driver is actually operating the van. So there's a power steering pump running up to that vehicle, to that control. And Hallie doesn't actually have the car in her control, so we can shoot her in any angle without being in her way. It's a really safer way to do this. And so the story of Keep Your Cool Even When the Doors Fly Off is, see in the bottom middle, there's a bridge there in New Orleans, and we shut down that bridge for this shoot. And in the scene, Hallie's chasing a car that has kidnapped her child, and there's two semis, and she's meant to swerve to get around one and finds the other. And when she did, the door didn't get latched all the way on her car. And as she swerved, note she's not driving, her door of her car flew open between two semis. And the next thing in the scene is she's supposed to struggle and get her seatbelt on. So here's Hallie in a car that's swinging out of control that she's not actually driving, not seatbelted in with the door flying open in the middle of the... She kept her composure, and she was a total pro, but the fear in her eyes, I was in the follow vehicle watching this all happen, and at the end of it, she goes, "Guys, I really hope you got that one because I'm way too freaked out to ever do that again." So just keeping your cool, keeping professional, even when things don't go right, it's very helpful.
Strong daily habits bring quality work, and I'm convinced that this man, Mr. Tom Cruise, is the epitome of Hollywood superstar, and part of that is his laser focus and his commitment to the practice. We were on set on Oblivion, which is what this photo is, and he walked in a room of about 220 people, and all of a sudden the room's silent. And you might think, oh, this guy's going to make a scene or do this or that, but he immediately turned his focus and attention to the director, and everyone followed suit. Tom absolutely has good habits, and that is evident in his quality work.
Another piece from my time in New York is Law and Order. Know the expectations and the scope of the work. So my expectation was, we're shooting in a courthouse. It's going to be big lights outside, rigged into lifts. We're going to be doing a ton of labor. I show up, coffee in hand, and I'm ready to just unstrap all these big lights and get to work. I'm like, why is the cable not down yet? We got all this work to do. And the gaffer's like, man, sit down, enjoy your coffee. Have you watched our show? And I was like, I don't watch Law and Order that much. And he goes, man, we live in the close-up on this show. We're lighting faces. We're not doing these big cinematic things. And having that good understanding of what that show was helped me move with that crew. They were on season 17. That's a very uncommon amount of seasons to get to with any television show. But man, I learned a ton from that group. And one of the things that you got to know is not every job is the same, and not everyone sees the same solution as you expect. So just make sure you know the scope before you go into it. So this slide has kind of two big lessons, and one of them I'm going to point out first is redundancy is key, and the other one is use your experience to guide your team. And this was a green screen shoot with Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown from Back to the Future, if you're not familiar, so great Scott, you know. And to this point in my life, this was the most stressful incident of my career. This was a New York shoot. We were in an old abandoned warehouse, and the size of this wall was all green screen. And it was with some of the cast from Lord of the Rings. And someone thought it was a really good idea to put some sound blankets up near and around our generator during a blizzard in the middle of the night. And we only had one generator. And all of a sudden, the entire set just went black. And here's Christopher Lloyd standing in a dark set, and I'm scrambling to try to figure out what we can do to get ourselves back online. And in the dark, I'm plugging in a few lights and getting things back on one light at a time, and we're on this tiny green screen now. And Christopher Lloyd, keeping us cool, sees the scene, knows that complaining about it's not going to make a big difference. He just starts performing Shakespeare in the dark. So like, we're having this private performance of Christopher Lloyd performing King Lear in a terribly stressful situation. And his just professionalism and enthusiasm and his joy to be there shined through and helped us all see that this didn't have to be that critical of a disaster. We could still make a lot from it. And ultimately, you know, it turned out. So using your experience to help keep the cool when everything goes badly can really help. And again, if we had had two generators, there wouldn't have even been a problem. So redundancy is key, and saving a little bit of money is not always worth it. So this is just a behind the scenes still of a movie we did with Bruce Willis. I probably did, I don't know, 3 or 4 films with Bruce Willis in the late times of his career. This was Kidnap. And one funny story about Bruce Willis is that he loved to gamble. And one thing you might not know about him is he made about $1.5 million a day. And so to him, you know, what we might think is a lot of money is definitely not the same. One night, he reportedly lost $250,000 at the boat before coming to set. He was pretty grumpy that day, but he didn't always lose. And this is going into the idea of share the wealth. One night, he won really big on a movie called Lay the Favorite, and he did something unexpected for the crew. He put everybody's name into a hat, and he drew out 10 names and gave each person that he drew their name, he gave them $1,000 cash. I thought that was a really cool thing to do. And there's a ton of ways to do this in your real life. It could be as easy as sending a Bravo or send an email to somebody's manager. Recognize the people who contribute to your team's success. And that leads me to another really tough show, but a part where just saying thank you can make a big difference. This was American Horror Story Freak Show. I was the second unit gaffer on that, and we had to build roads in the middle of the swamp so our trucks wouldn't get stuck in the mud. This was the first time I've been on a show that had a full-time animal wrangler to keep us safe from alligators and snakes. This was a hard show, like I said, because of the swamp, because of the heat. The Fox 15 was kind of our saving grace. They had a policy that you couldn't work the crew more than 15 hours a day. 14 hours was normal on that show, and it went for months and months and months. During the Emmys, Kathy Bates, who's in a beard here, she thanked the crew for all their hard work when she was accepting her Emmy nomination. And as far as my career goes, this is the only time that my work was nominated for an Emmy, so that was a pretty big deal. We didn't win for cinematography, but being a part of the crew that was nominated, it was a pretty big honor. So another one is be emotionally prepared for change. Change is inevitable. We were shooting in a dark bar in New Orleans, and the director decided he was on a dolly and he wanted to go all the way to the floor and look up. And he looked up and saw our lights. We had to de-rig everything, and usually you'd tie the lights up with string but someone had come with the great idea to zip tie the whole thing to the roof, and we had all the first unit cast on set, and now we're walking in with these big ladders, and we need to cut all this stuff down for the director. And one thing about TV shows is they move very fast pace. On a low-end TV show, you'll be spending at least $28,000 an hour. So if you cost the production even 2 hours a week, you could be fired. So build for change. The young man who used zip ties to install that set made a huge mistake, which cost first unit a lot of time. It's not a thing you want to do. Freak Show was a fascinating show. Like, that girl in the cage is 22 years old. She's the smallest woman living on Earth. Sarah Paulson with the 2 heads, that was pretty interesting. And then there was a lot of other sword swallowers and just some wild things that happened on that show. So expect to be wrong, and you won't be nearly as disappointed. Your teammates will really thank you if you build for change.
Find a way to love what you do. I was sitting in a cast chair next to a new cast member, an older gentleman, and he just kept talking about how much he loves acting, and he started telling me how he got his daughter to be in one of the Child's Play movies with him. And I looked over and said, "Oh, cool. How many of the Child's Play movies were you in?" He said, "Well, all of them. I'm Chucky." It was really funny to me to get to meet the man who helped haunt my childhood, only to find out that he absolutely loves what he does.
So there've been plenty of bumps and bruises along the way. They brought along some good learning experiences. One thing I can impart is resourcing and logistics, as well as communication, they're key. Some fun pictures from some of the shows I worked on. This Is the End, Pitch Perfect, G.I. Joe, Heart Baby. I guess I worked on Twilight, but I didn't put any of those pictures in. But I hope I was able to impart some of the stories and life lessons that I learned from my previous career, and maybe you can use some of those for your life here at Cerner. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.